My name is Kelly Delancy. I am a second-year graduate student in anthropology. My project is the History of Eleuthera project. I became interested in this research during the fall 2014 semester. I was taking a community archaeology and heritage course, and I was also looking for a thesis topic. And I had previously became interested in Bahamian heritage, and that is closely linked to history. So in beginning to look at community heritage in the Bahamas, I noticed that we don't have a documented history of a lot of our out-island communities. So the first thing that I needed to do was document a history of this particular community that I was interested in, which is called Tarpon Bay on the island of Eleuthera. And so that's how this all started. One of the things, or the major thing that I wanted to learn from these histories were heritage values of the community, so that would inform future, present and future cultural resource management practices that are sustainable. I learned a lot about the development of this community, the events that contributed to its development in the present-day society, and I also gained an appreciation for out-island communities on the whole, because we don't know a lot about them to begin with. But these communities have been through a lot, and they've seen various events like boom and bust economies of tourism, and they've managed to withstand. And I now appreciate those who chose to remain in the settlements over time instead of choosing to leave the settlement, and they have contributed to what it is today. One of the major issues were issues of access, and so I chose to begin with the community of Tarpon Bay because I am a descendant of this community through my father, who is a McCartney. And so I began contacting the community through him and his contacts and those descendants of Tarpon Bay who are residing in New Providence, which is where I live. And so I contacted those people and asked them for any contacts that they may have in the settlement, and then I used a snowball technique in finding more people. The people that I spoke to provided contacts for future participants in the study, and I just went from there. The people in the community, they are very friendly to everyone. They are out-island community residents. They are actually known for being friendly people. It's because it's taught, it's manners and politeness. But at the same time, it did take some warming up for a lot of people. And initially when I went in, I introduced myself, but I also had to make a connection to them personally. So I had to trace how I'm either related to them or related to the settlement. And then they would say, "Oh, you as family," or something like that, and "Oh, call me cuz, we cousins," and stuff like that. And then they would start to open up a little more. And I think that's kind of why my interviews are a little more informal and sort of candid. Yeah. Well, I collected a lot of colorful stories from the community members, and one of them comes from Curina Mingo. And Stephen Carey also told me the same story. He agreed with it. And it was a story of a thief in the community, but everybody knew that this person seems to have sticky fingers. And one night when the mailboat came in to bring supplies, this person went out on the dock at night and just took a giant bag that he found, brought it back to his house, and then sat down in his kitchen with his wife, and they were going through the bag, and they opened it up, and it was a dead man to be transported. And so the man's wife, she ran out of the house screaming down the road, and then the next morning, the man, he took the bag and the dead body back to the boat, but when he arrived, everybody was at the boat to pick up their belongings, and so there was a crowd of people. So everybody just, I guess it was like a public shaming, because he had no choice but to bring the bag back to the boat. Yeah. I think one of the future directions for this research is actually to compile these histories and stories into a local history book. and distribute it to the residents and descendants, and then of course whoever is interested. And then possibly cultural programming for the Eleuthera Arts and Cultural Center, because right now they have art programming for the community, but they haven't really developed the cultural component as yet, partly because there was not really an understanding of how to go about that. And so now that we know that the community values the people and the stories of the community more so than actual objects, preserving the stories and then putting together a program, maybe like a street as museum program with maybe mobile app tours and stuff like that, that we can use about a minute sound bites from the interviews to bring a little life to the stories of the community. That might be one way to go. Anthropologists today are increasingly advocating this decolonizing of anthropology and practice and allowing communities to determine their use of archaeological studies and anthropological studies and products. This was really eye-opening for me because the community seems to depart from materials, and that's what a lot of anthropologists and archaeologists and even heritage practitioners, they come in with a materialist approach to heritage preservation. But these interviews, they kind of show that this community does not value objects, and they're not really interested in coming into a museum and viewing something like that so much. So it sort of demonstrates that this might be a new ontology that we need to see how we can incorporate a bit more and then plan for that instead of trying to create necessarily a register of historic places or collect a bunch of old things that we feel should be important to the community. So it's giving community voice and then sort of extracting the values from that and then building on those community values. Yeah, there's another story from Kirina Mingo also. He was telling me about the different neighborhoods in the community and this particular street or area known as the Jux. And this was known to be a very rowdy and noisy place, lots of people, lots of young kids. And one day he and his friend were walking by, and this lady came out of her house and she was drunk and she was in this giant dress and she just started twirling around in the street. I guess she was also really frustrated being cooped up with all of the noise, and so she was just spinning in the street. And then Kirina Mingo and his friend Garfield McCartney, they just turned to each other and looked and said, like, this is no place to be, and then they just like laughed. Like they're gonna stay away from that area. I am actually hoping that I can go back and develop some of the stories because I was only able to spend 5 weeks this past summer there. So everything was really rushed, and so I'm hoping in the future I could take more time and collect more information and more details, more clarification on different things. And then also it would be nice if other people were interested and can help or even just take it over and develop it in even a different way to add to it. Awesome.